Chief Executive Officer for NEEF, Mr. Humphrey Mdyetseni, the Director of Information, Mr. Mdyetseni, the Deputy Director of Press and Publications, Mr. Edison Mwamvani, the Head of Finance at NEEF, Mr. Benedicto Kananza, the Head of Credit, Mr. Felix Tembo, the Head of the Credit Manager, Mr. Whiton Mweta, all government and NEEF staff present here, colleagues in the media. Allow me to begin the program today by first welcoming you here. We are all aware that the National Economic Empowerment Fund has been in operation for quite some time now in Malawi, and today it has pleased them to bring us together here to brief us mainly on the progress they have made so far in terms of loan disbursement and also other issues involving the revolving fund. So at this juncture, I'll hand over to the Director of Information for a few remarks before we offer the opportunity to NEEF to brief us today. A very good morning to you all.
Thank you very much, Sam Majabanda, the Chief Executive Officer for National Economic Empowerment Fund Limited, NEEF, Mr. Humphrey Mdyetseni, all senior officials from the National Economic Empowerment Fund Limited, NEEF, the Deputy Director of Information responsible for Press and Publication, Mr. Edison Mwamvani, colleagues from the Ministry, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. This morning, as it has already been stated by the Director of Ceremonies, we have got NEEF executive which has come here to enlighten us on a number of developments that have taken place. You should bear in mind that NEEF started as an initiative by government so that they can be in a position to empower people who are involved in commerce or those who are entrepreneurs. The record so far has been very amusing and encouraging. Without taking much of your time, I would like to ask Mr. Mdyetseni to take us through the presentation, and thereafter members of the press can ask questions. Over to you, Mr. Mdyetseni.
Thank you very much, Director of Information, Mr. Mdyetseni, senior officials from the Ministry, members of the press gathered here in today, my colleagues from the National Economic Empowerment Fund, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, we, the National Economic Empowerment Fund, find it an honor this morning to brief Malawians on the progress the fund has been making ever since it was instituted by government in September 2020. The National Economic Empowerment Fund succeeded the then MEDEF, which was called MEDEF, Malawi Enterprise Development Fund, in order to carry on the business that MEDEF was doing. But of significance is that the National Economic Empowerment Fund is not just concerned about disbursing loans and recovering those loans from Malawians, but it adds more impotence, and that is disbursement of loans that economically empower the Malawians. That's the landmark difference, to economically empower Malawians. So it means if the loans are given to Malawians, whether as individuals or as groups, there must be notable transformation in their economic livelihood, and which can spur to the transformation of the wider economy of our country. Let me mention also that the vision of government, which was given to the National Economic Empowerment Fund, is that it should be a national fund What it means is that it should be a fund that can reach each and every corner of Malawi. It should not benefit Malawians on account of another criteria other than them being national, being Malawians, available at every corner of Malawi, and with capability to engage in entrepreneurship. So these are the key attributes of the fund. To this effect, the fund has been given a target that come financial year 2023-24, it should have disbursed at least 75 billion Malawi kwacha in loans to Malawians. And this 75 billion kwacha is estimated to target or to reach out to nearly 300,000 Malawians. This means that Malawians will be provided with loans of micro nature, small as well as medium level. So this fund therefore is going to accommodate at least up to 300,000 Malawians. So far in terms of progress, as we stand as of end of June, which is 16 months ever since the fund was rolled out, nearly 110,000 Malawians have benefited from the fund, and the amounts of loans disbursed are 37 billion. So 37 billion has been disbursed, 110,000 Malawians have benefited so far. With regard to recovery rate, we are progressing quite well at 72%. So that means that for every 100 Malawi kwacha we disburse, 72 kwacha is being repaid by Malawians. We consider this as quite an improvement when we compare to the record that we had under the MADEF and the MEDEF when we were implementing similar programs. Nevertheless, we are not satisfied because we believe that if we hit at least above 80% collection rate, that is going to be a bit ideal for sustainability of the fund as it were. So the National Economic Empowerment Fund, as I've already said, its vision is to be an inclusive microfinance institution reaching out to all Malawians. And we strategically aim to empower Malawians economically. And when we talk about Malawians, the focus is on ordinary and underserved. When you talk about ordinary, these are Malawians who cannot afford to access the loans to commercial banks and other institutions whose conditions are a bit tougher than the ones we offer at NEEF. And our focus is on women, youths, and persons with disabilities, knowing fully well that when we talk about ordinary persons, the catchment largely falls on this type of people. We are emphasizing NEEF offers loans and not gifts or cash transfers. The reason why NEEF offers loans is because this is a fund that must sustain itself. It must revolve around the beneficiaries, and that is only possible when the beneficiaries repay back the loans. So we are stressing NEEF is there to empower Malawians through disbursement of loans, not gifts, and to also undertake capacity building for those that may wish to be trained on how to utilize the loans accordingly. Pursuant to the strategic objective I've mentioned, there are specific objectives which NEEF seeks to achieve in the 3-4 years that it has been given to implement the first phase of the program. These are three. Namely, the first one is to enable Malawians meaningfully contribute to the economic development of the country. So it means that when we give them loans, micro, small, and medium loans, Malawians will be active participants in the building of the economy of the country. Secondly, this is an initiative through which government is going to create jobs for Malawians. We seek to contribute to the creation of 1 million jobs that government has set as a target for itself. So far, in the 16 months that we have implemented the program, we can boast of having contributed nearly 160,000 of the jobs. let me stress here, these are jobs, because when we give somebody a loan and they are able to run around to meet their needs, we consider that as job provision, other than employing people directly into the fund as loan officers or other capacities. Thirdly, the specific objective of this fund is to entrench or deepen the spirit of entrepreneurship among Malawians. We take cognizance of the fact that in the absence or where there are challenges with regard to employment, Malawians must still have an alternative. And these Malawians must be undertaking entrepreneurship and on a sustainable basis. So when you talk about entrenching the spirit of entrepreneurship, we mean that whoever benefits from NEEF must take entrepreneurship as a career and not as an option. Otherwise, we may not be able to redeem this country from joblessness as well as unemployment. As I've already said, we are progressing quite well, 37 billion disbursed so far. And we were also asked to highlight what have been, we consider, the key milestones that NEEF has made ever since MEDEF was wound up, because this is going to be very important for Malawians to appreciate that the fund is decisively moving forward to economically empower Malawians and improve on the economic situation of the country. So 36.8 billion, or nearly 37 billion, has been disbursed against the 12.6 billion that was disbursed under MEDEF in 6 years. 110,000 Malawians have benefited, which also matches with what MEDEF Malawians benefited for under MEDEF, 113,000 in 6 years. So we are looking at what has been done in a year as compared to what was done in 6 years, to underscore the point that the fund is decisively moving forward in as far as saving Malawians is concerned. Of the amount I've talked about, nearly 15 billion has gone to women. When we talk about women, we are looking at ladies between 35 and above, from 35 years and above. While 16 billion has gone to youths. When we talk about the youths, we are talking about those between 18 and 35 years. So you can see the youth are topping the chart in as far as beneficiaries of the National Economic Empowerment Fund is concerned. Men are lagging behind because there are not too many men that are ordinary, as per the description I've given before, and these have benefited 5.8 billion. So in terms of numbers, youth top the chart, 52,000 when you count individual youths, women 44,000, men 10,000, and we have also offered almost 18 loan products. So we implement a variety of loan products. So NEEF has given out almost 18 loan products, way high up as compared to 8 loan products which were being offered under MEDEF as of 2020. Number of jobs created so far, as I've already said, is 160,000 in just 16 months, as compared to 113,000 that were created under MEDEF in 6 years. Interest rates offered by NEEF are one of the rock bottom prices if you look at the microfinance industry at large. To date, the weighted average of our interest rates is only 2%. Way below the 4.5% that was being offered by MEDEF. This is 2% per month, while MEDEF was offering a weighted average of 4.5% per month. So this underscores the point that affordability is one of the trademark regarding NEEF loans. Recovery rate is quite unprecedented. As I've already said, it's at 72% as compared to an average of 21% under MEDEF. So you can see that now, at least the government, through NEEF, is trying as much as possible to collect the funds that have been disbursed to Malawians so that the revolving fund is sustained. Let me mention to members of the press that we enjoy good recovery, such that for the period between 1st April to 30th of June, we disbursed nearly 5 billion to Malawians, of which 3 billion was from collections from the same period. So it means that if we can collect 3 billion and disburse within 3 months, there is high potential for the fund to continue making good progress in as far as collection and the disbursement of the funds is concerned. Another important feature underscoring that NEEF is decisively moving towards being a national fund, making sure that a Malawian, wherever he or she is, can access services of the fund, is that to date we have so far established 89 outlets countrywide, way above the 19 outlets that were there by 2020 when we were winding up MEDEF. So 70 more outlets have been opened countrywide, and we are still moving to open more and more outlets. Let me mention here that in order not just to make the offices institutions per se, but to ensure that service is being delivered right there, we have recruited massively. Over 400 personnel are working with NEEF now, of which in excess of 200 are loan officers. So on average, we have a loan officer for each constituency in Malawi. For bigger constituencies, we have even 2 or 3 loan officers. When you compare to the era MEDEF, MADEF and other regimes before, it was an average of probably 1 or 2 loan officers per district. Now you would look at a district, you have 10 or 15 constituencies being served by 1 or 2 loan officers. But to date, a loan officer per constituency. And we are not satisfied with that, because we want, if all goes well, we should have them at least per ward, so that at least a constituency can have 2 or more loan officers countrywide. Another distinguishing mark about the approach to NEEF is that we are using developmental structures to deliver the services. When we say developmental structure, is that we follow the village development committee, the area development committee, up to the DDC structures, because these are apolitical. These are developmental structures. These are the vehicles through which developmental programs are delivered to the people. Before that, it was simply a direct contact between the loan officers and the powers that be and other beneficiaries, which was creating an added advantage on the part of those politically connected and affluent as opposed to the ordinary persons. Again, we are pursuing the element of transparency and accountability by continuously releasing information regarding the progress of the fund. So this presser is one of those avenues through which we are informing Malawians with regard to progress of the fund. This we believe is going to be sustained, because we believe the fund is owned by Malawians, and the more we are transparent and accountable before them by way of how much business we are doing, then it is going to be at least a much fairer way of conducting business. We also stress that our loan processes are quite thorough, and hence the need for Malawians to follow them. As I've already said, we have loan officers that are the contact points. However, the loan officers work hand in hand with the developmental structures like the VDCs and ADCs, which are the entry points for mobilization of people wishing to obtain the loans by way of groups. And then these are supposed to be linked to the NEEF loan officers, trained accordingly, and the loans disbursed. However, for individuals, they simply walk into our offices, meet the loan officers, and get the information they need and access the loans. So let me mention that the processes must be adhered to, because they are not only applying to a certain group of people, but each and every Malawian must adhere to the processes that we have cited.
Sorry, sir.
Now, others might be asking, how much amount of loans can a person get from the National Economic Empowerment Fund? You may wish to note that when we're starting disbursing the loans, we had started with the lower amounts that we were disbursing. That time we had found MADEF disbursing about 50,000 as the smallest amount of loans. But it's pleasing, we may wish to inform Malawians that the loans now have been escalated to a minimum of 250,000. So a Malawian can only start taking loans amounting to 250,000 from NEEF, And we have increased even the maximum amount from the 75 million that was being offered under MEDEF. Now a Malawian can get as much as 250 million. The reason we have increased the amounts are that there are a number of reasons. The first one being that generally the economic environment as a result of the devaluation of the kwacha and coupled with inflationary effects warranted the revising of the amounts upwards to respond to those. Secondly, it's the government decision that the fund should meaningfully begin to empower Malawians to undertake activities that have a wider impact on the economy. We are working with the Minister of Trade and Industry, for instance, to start offering micro-industry loans. These are loans that are going to help some Malawians to begin to open small industries to manufacture goods and services that are much wanted by Malawians. Like, for example, we have a problem of cooking oil and other items which we are importing. So we believe that 250 million is quite a substantial amount to support somebody willing to venture into those type of enterprises. We have also improved on the turnaround time. We had previously problems whereby people could take 2 or 3 months to access the loans, but we have given ourselves a target that a Malawian must access a loan within 30 days. We believe that is going to be a good turnaround time and that people are going to engage in enterprises of their choice if the loans are disbursed on time. We are also offering a number of loans, and you might wish to note that, as I've already said, there are 18 loan products that are on offer. These loan products strategically cover every sphere of a Malawian. We had been receiving complaints when some Malawians come that they cannot access some types of loans because maybe they could not find a loan convenient to their nature of enterprises. We have 18 and we are still rolling out even more. And for the first time in the history of the country, we have extended the age limit from the then less than 60 years under MEDEF. Now we have reached up to 75 years. So it means a Malawian up to 75 years of age can access a loan from NEEF. We believe so because some Malawians, even after 60, are still energetic and they should not have the door shut out for them to participate meaningfully in the economic development of the country. To ensure equitable disbursement of the loans, because this is one of the issues that has been rocking the country, that probably the loans are sensitive to political affiliations of the government, of the ruling government, or to other machinations, as it were. We have put up what we call an equitable approach. The equitable approach is a 4-tier approach whereby remote and sparsely populated constituencies will have a target of at least 250 million disbursed per constituency by 31st March 2023. For moderately sizable constituencies, rural-based with at least reasonable populations, the threshold is up to 350 million. For peri-urban and district-based constituencies where business is more concentrated, there are more people concentrated there, the threshold is up to 400 million per constituency as a target by 31st March. And finally, the urban constituencies where there is heavy concentration of personnel, huge demand for loans and more business, the threshold is 500 million per constituency. So others may ask that, for example, Lilongwe City Center, Blantyre, Malabada, Mzuzu City, these are very huge constituencies. What we have done is we are going to increase loan officers, and each loan officer is also going to disburse up to 500 million. So what it means here is the disbursement is going to be more responsive to territorial territorial size of the constituency, but also more importantly, population and business boom, as it were. In so doing, there is not going to be a question to say you could have given more to this one or to that one in the absence of a plausible criteria. We believe this is fair and just so that the resources are purposefully disbursed across the country. We have also been asked about the recovery efforts. There are concerns. Is NEEF going to be harsh to people when they are not repaying the loans? And there are also stories, some of them unfounded, that are already spreading regarding NEEF not being sensitive to the plight of the beneficiaries when it comes to collection of the loans. We wish to inform the country at large that we have a four-tier approach which we follow when we are collecting our loans. The first approach is whereby we routinely follow up with the client to repay the loans, suppose they are having problems. If that fails, we go to what we call the guarantor. The guarantor is a person who signs as a witness to the person to get a loan from NEEF. So we also engage this to help us with collections from the beneficiaries. If that fails, then we exercise what we call moderate enforcement of recovery, where our recovery team engages the client intensely in order to work out with them if there are challenges on how they can repay, up to the final approach. We must stress the final approach is where we pursue legal means, which may involve confiscation of property if it reaches that stage, or suing the client. But we must stress that is the maximum. And to date, we have not decisively engaged in that approach. But we wanted to inform that it is not when we are engaging somebody forcefully, it's not that we just wake up and engage them. It takes months, sometimes 3 months, 6 months after the person has defaulted the loans. But the crux of the matter is that Malawians are repaying quite well this time around, because they fully understand this is a revolving fund, and if well supported by their kindly gesture, then it is going to sustain itself and benefit many more of them. We know we have challenges so far. It has not been rosy for us as the National Economic Empowerment Fund, but we are glad to indicate that in the midst of all these challenges, government is coming in quite handy and persuasively to ensure that we address the challenges. I mentioned about the inadequate staff. We still are driving towards recruiting more loan officers. We had a countrywide engagement over the past 2-3 weeks, where we were also told that the people in constituency still demand for more loan officers. So we are going to continue recruiting loan officers. Our target, as I've already said, is that to move from the current 200 loan officers to at least 400, so that the concentration of clients per loan officer is quite reasonable and they can be assisted on time. We are going to continue revising our loan processes and policies so that they are sensitive to the needs of Malawians and they respond to the evolving socio-economic environment our country is going through. We are also going to continue mobilizing resources because, as I've already said, government gave a target of 75 billion by 2024-25, but we take cognizance of the fact that the overwhelming demand that is there for NEEF loans in Malawi warrants that that threshold be exceeded at all costs. So we are going to continue to mobilize more resources so that if possible we can disburse above the targeted 75 billion and we reach out to more than 300,000 Malawians, because according to our computations, Malawians have a huge demand for these loans to actively participate in the economic activities. We are also going to continue expanding offices, establishments, so that Malawians access the services from nearer. And let me also mention here, we are going to continue collecting default loans, especially those that were disbursed before NEEF. We have not stopped collecting those loans, and we want to collect each and every penny that was disbursed at that time. We know it's a challenge, but we are there to live up to the challenge, because that's the task that the Malawians have given us. Actually, there was a question to say, there is need just to forgive the Malawians because, you know, some were collecting without knowing and things of that nature. We appreciate all those circumstances, but we believe that in the final analysis, that money belongs to Malawians, and the disbursement was that they were loans. So as loans, they must be collected and revolved around as expected. Another challenge which we cannot go without mentioning is, we know, members of the media, there has been a lot of negative media reporting regarding NEEF. I know news must sell, but at the end of the day, we must have balanced stories, because there is a lot that NEEF has undertaken in the past 17-16 months, which is worth writing on the positive side of it, in as much as the negatives could be there. In the final analysis, let me also indicate that Other challenges still remain at community level, and we plead with our local leaders to support the fund, and we, especially the VDC, ADC structures, and also that we support the communities receive the loan officers warmly. There have been efforts whereby some loan officers have been threatened in pursuit of collecting the loans, which is not the spirit that we believe is going to support the fund accordingly. Otherwise, what we can say here is, in the final analysis, NEEF is making good progress. We are on track, and we believe that in the next 2-3 years, we are going to conclude the target that was set to save 300,000 Malawians, to disburse in excess of 75 billion kwacha loans, to achieve collection rate that makes the fund sustainable, and that is of at least 80% and above. And at the end of the day, the Malawians that benefit must actively participate in the development or in the economic development of the country, and their own livelihoods must improve for the better. Otherwise, this is what we had to share with the Malawians. Maybe I will hand over to the convener for further progression of the presser. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mdyetseni. Colleagues from the media, the floor is now open for questions. Please introduce yourself and the organization that you represent. Before you start that, I'd like to put it on record that, look, NEEF has expressed concern of the poor reportage involving its operations. Maybe this will be an opportunity for you to get to know the truth and also to record the truth. As has been indicated by Mr. Mdyetseni, the achievement of NEEF in the last 1 year or so surpassed something that was achieved in the last 5 years by the previous MEDEF organization that was in existence. So I would urge you that those are areas that you can dwell on, and you can also pursue him so they can actually expound from what has happened. So we're going to take 5 questions, and you can only slot in 2 questions per person. Who do you start off with? At the back, I recognize. Come closer with it.
Good morning, CEO. My name is Chimwemwe Padata, a reporter for Zodiac. I have 2 questions. The first one, I just wanted to find out, you recently announced that you are engaging debt collectors to assist in the recovery of about 6.2 billion funds before NEEF rebranded. So I just wanted to find out how far have you gone with this arrangement. And the other one, there have been concerns that the NEEF should consider those individuals, those Malawians who applied for loans before rebranding to NEEF. There are cases that are coming out from Cholo where some individuals applied before rebranding. That was in the late 2020, and now they are now asking NEEF if you can consider them instead of nullifying their application forms. So those 2 questions, how are you handling these issues? Thank you.
Next question.
My name is Elio Tandan from ZBFM. My name is Elio Tandan from ZBFM. Ndi mafunso awiri. Ndimafuna kudziwapo kuti ngati kumaboma ena ngati amene kudzidwa ndi Gombe, ngati maboma Nsanje komanso Chikwawa, pali enanso amene anatenga ngati malonzi. Ndimafuna kudziwa kuti kodi kwa anthu amene odabwerera kubwezawo mwa ikirapo ndondomeko zotani tengera kuti ena mwina mabizinesi awo anakhudzika. And another issue inanso kukhudza ngati munakambaponso nkhani yokhudza ndi kuti kumaboma ena mukumapita ena akuyankhulapo zonena kuti mukumayuza ma forces ngati mina amachitira mamilitary kuti mupange collect ndalama zanu, kuti mudatifotokozerepo kuti kodi zikumakhala modani mina pambali imeneyo. Sakindamine.
Jinanga limayeso jekadzula kuchokera ku MBC mwakambapo khaniyonera kuti paperekedwa ndalama kapena pakha ngongole zimene zikaperekedwa ma constituencies kwina 250 kodi aphunga nyumba malamulo zimene zakudziwa kale kapena zili motani kapena Mungu azizimutsa ntchito ngati imeneyi. Komanso ndimaonekera pena kuti mbuyo mwakambapo kuti sanabwere NEEF anthu ena atenga ndalama mbuyomo kuphatizapo kuti ngoti andala amene kodi mukuwafikira bwanji saona ngati tsopano mukuwatsatanso mbali ngati imene muyichite apology yanji zomwe kwambiri.
Zikomo kwambiri. Dzina langa ndine Love Mokomo kuchokera ku thank you. Dzina langa ndine Love Mokomo kuchokera ku Full FM. Timangofuna tidziwe kuti mwina long term strategies ku NEEF ndotani malingana ndi zotsatira zomwe mwatiuza lero pomwe manena kuti NEEF ikuchita bwino nde long term strategies ndotani kapena kuti framework ndiyotani. Zikomo kwambiri.
I'm Smart Chaliga from Kasupa Radio. I have 2 questions. One, how much of actually have you been able to monitor and evaluate the impact of these loans on the economy, communities, and what kind of impact have been realized so far, and any lessons learned as of now? And which sectors in the business ecosystem have received more funds from NEEF so far in sectors of this country, autonomous tourism, ICT, and many more? Thank you.
Thank you very much, convener. I will take on the questions that have been put forward by the press. The progress regarding debt collectors is that we have not made headway on account of technicality. When I say on account of technicality, is that we have been made aware that that type of exercise requires a thorough legal involvement. When we talk about that, we mean that legal entities are those that are mandated to undertake debt collection exercise outside the NEEF as a microfinance institution. So because we have to go back to the drawing board to engage legal entities to pursue that, in the interim we are undertaking the collection by ourselves, because already by our task we are mandated. But anybody outside that whom we want to engage must be a legal entity. So that's why some of the debt collectors that express interest are not legal entities in their own right. So we cannot contravene the law in pursuit of quick recovery of the funds. So we are doing it ourselves as in-house. That's why we have scaled up the loan recovery sections across the country. In all the regions we have beefed up loan recovery teams, and they're making a lot of progress so far. So it's not a loss to Malawians that we have slowed down on engagement of debt collectors until we exhaust the legal requirements that are there. About Malawians that applied before MEDEF, we have already sensitized the Malawians that the NEEF fund is open to everyone. So it means those that applied under MEDEF, because the procedures have changed, they have to restart again. For those that owe the fund and have never repaid, they will only access new loans when they repay the old loans, and that is quite clear and emphatic. Of course, we have made arrangements whereby for those that have shown interest to repay, if they repay more than half of the loans, procedurally we are going to recapitalize them so that their businesses do not suffer simply because they are going to continue servicing the NEEF loan or the MEDEF loan. But when they repay more than 50%, then they can apply for recapitalization or top-up loan so that the business is moving, but at the same time they are also servicing the old and the new loans. That's the arrangement that we have put in place. In terms of disaster affected districts, like you were talking about Gombe, especially the lower Shire, we undertook our assessment, and the assessment was encouraging in that majority of our clients, actually over 90% of them, did not have their capacities to repay the loans affected. I'm stressing there. We undertook assessment of the clients that took the loans, and over 80% of those had not their capacities to repay affected. And again, subsidiary to that, for the few that were affected, we entered into an agreement, one in terms of rescheduling of the repayment. So they could ask for a moratorium in terms of how much period do they want to recover and resume repayment of the loans. Remember that any write-off of the loans is not an option for now, on account that a write-off of a loan is not a prerogative of NEEF as a government institution, but it has to go through the necessary government machinery. The cabinet and even the parliament has to weigh in for the loans to be written off. So we must stress there. Others could be asking, why don't you just go and write off? Those are the processes that we must go through. But meanwhile, I'm pleased to report that over 80% of the beneficiaries have not had their repayment capacities affected by the unfortunate incidents that took place. Hence, we still have the stamina to pursue those loans. Forceful collection of loans. I've already explained the four-tier approach we use when collecting the loans. Forceful collection is a last resort. Last resort. And as I've already said, it's only less than 5% of the loans that have reached the last resort. But all those under MEDEF have already qualified for the last resort. That is the forceful collection of the loans. But as a government body that is well informed by opinions of Malawians at large, we have not decisively moved towards the forceful collection as is being alleged. What we are doing is continuously engaging the people to restructure the loans so that they can repay them. Because we believe we still need the people tomorrow. So it's not a question of simply, we can say, simply imposing your weight on them, as it were. We are still being in the amicable season, a season of peace in as far as the collection of the loans is concerned. Our MP is aware about the increased threshold. We could say some are not aware because the increased threshold was effected by the board early this month when it met. We are going to inform them, and some have already been informed through the district stakeholder awareness meetings that we have been undertaking. These district stakeholder awareness meetings are progressing quite well. We have completed all districts in the central and southern region. We are only remaining with the northern region. And these involve the members of parliament, councillors, chiefs, and the area development committee chairpersons. So you can see this was quite representative of all decision makers at community level. So through the same process, I can say some MPs are informed, except those in the north where we are yet to reach in terms of the improved or increased the threshold of maximum and minimum loan amounts. The previous debtors I've already answered. They are being engaged, and we are making steady progress in the collections. So it's a continuous process. Our long-term strategy, after saying all this, what's our long-term strategy? Our long-term strategy is first and foremost to increase availability of resources to the fund, because we believe there are many more Malawians potentially needing NEEF loans. Actually, our quick computations indicates that 75 billion is going to reach only 300,000 Malawians a maximum. But 300,000 Malawians is only 10% of Malawians that potentially need NEEF loans. So it means that we need 75 billion and more. So technically, we should even be gunning to mobilize 1 trillion. That's what we should be aiming at if we are to cover 3 million plus Malawians that are going to need these loans. Another strategy is to intensify and improve collection, because this fund can only sustain itself if it is collecting the loans that it has disbursed. So I already mentioned about that. So our target is that we should collect not less than 80%. And if possible, we should be moving towards 90-95% collection rate to sustain the fund. And because this is a job creation avenue, our other strategy is to disburse, to scale up disbursement of loans to entrepreneurs that can create jobs. These are in the medium level category, like for example the 250 million and others in that particular range, because these ones, according to classification of job creation opportunities by the Minister of Industry and Trade, medium entrepreneurs can create between 20 and 100 jobs each. So our strategy is to beef up that particular aspect, and then support, on top of supporting the micro-industry sector in our country to ensure that the economy meaningfully benefits from these loans. They should not just be consumption-oriented, but they should also be pro-growth oriented, as it were. We also believe other strategies to encompass as many Malawians as possible by multiplying the loan products, as I've already said. So we are going to generate more and more loan products so that Malawians are ably catered for in as far as NEEF loans are concerned. By way of sectors that have benefited the most, retail and trade is topping the chart, having benefited from 60% of the loans disbursed so far. Agriculture is at 20%, and then we have the hospitality or tourism sector 10%, and manufacturing is at the 10%. So that's how we have spread our loans. We believe many more other sectors are going to open up after listening probably to our presentation to access these loans. I think these are the questions that we had. Okay, the last one was from Kasupe Radio. Have you been able to monitor and assess any impact regarding these loans? Yes, we have been doing that. I'm pleased to report that probably from the look of things, this is going to be one of the most successful government-funded microfinance institutions by way of impact. Our monitoring that we did in the last quarter of the 2021 financial year has revealed that 75% and more of the beneficiaries have registered positive improvement in their livelihood owing to NEEF loans, and they are also making profits from their enterprises. About 20% we are not sure of whether they are making profits or losses, while 90% we are very emphatic that because of the prevailing economic environment, the issues to do with the COVID and the general upside turn of the economy, they were not making profit, they were making actually losses. So we are pleased, because if less than 10% can say the loans are not profiting them, but 90% are either making profits or not sure about the exact their situation, we can say the fund is succeeding. Actually, we have made documentaries which would be glad to make available to members of the media to even broadcast on your TVs and radio stations about stories of Malawians that are making a good living out of these loans and their lives are changing. I think that's what I would say is my take on the first round of questions presented so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mdyetseni. Is there another question which, yeah?
Thank you so much. My name is Ishmael Maridadi. I have two questions. One is on the moratorium. I would like to understand as to, is there any specific grace period or moratorium when one is getting a loan, or you just have to pay immediately when you start that? I'm asking this question because I'm imagining someone comes to NEEF, borrows some money, and then he wants to import some raw materials, say in India or China, whatsoever. The shipping process itself takes 45 or close to 60 days. Do you have any consideration in regard to that? My second question is about the interest rate. You talked about the 2%. That is per month. And does that translate into 24% per annum? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Maybe we should be able to distinguish the way we are using the terminology here. The moratorium is applying to defaulters that we have concluded have defaulted on the MEDEF loans. So we have extended so far up to December this year, so that they should clear. What it means is if people are not responding, we are continuously engaging them. So too even for some that have started defaulting on NEEF loans, so that they repay up to December. Then after that, we go into the final gear, which I was talking about. Now, coming to the other side of your question, where you're asking about somebody who is taking a loan now, and maybe it will take 3-4 months to have the item given, to have the item to arrive, and he starts a business. Malawians might wish also to be informed that when you take a loan from NEEF, we give what we call 60 days grace period before you start repaying. That's the first element. So Malawians should understand that. This is mandatory. It's a 60 days grace period for business loans. This excludes loans for people that are getting in terms of employer supported, deducted from salary. No, for those ones we start immediately, that very same month. So sizi kugwirizana tingatero in vernacular. But for those in business, 60 days. Again, for other categories of business, we sit down. Because, for example, as you are right here putting it, somebody who wants to venture into micro industry or micro leasing type of loans, the gestation period for those loans to set up the facilities for the business may take probably even longer than 60 days. And let alone to begin to generate revenue, it may take a lot longer than that. We sit down, we work out with them. So 60 days is a mandatory grace period for generic loans. For loans that require specific conditions, we also discuss depending on those conditions. And if there are still problems after the repayment period has been reached, then we engage. Where their terminologies are used, we restructure the loan so that the person is given room to bounce back into business and repay accordingly. The second question, you are looking at the interest rate. Yes, in terms of nominal values, you will say 2% translates to 24%. But the real interest rate payable is usually less than 20%. Why am I saying so? We use what we call the reduced balance method. Now, the reduced balance method simply is that when you have taken a loan from NEEF, let's say 2.4 million, and you are supposed to be paying monthly. What it means that in the first month, you are going to pay 2% of the interest accruing on 2.4 million.